Then I had a scrap of flooring, just wood flooring. I threw everything on that, and that was in there for way too long. And then I went to the cutting boards everybody's using, and I still was awful with cable management, and I ultimately tried to I don't know if you can see in this picture, but I tried to push everything to the sides to give myself some room in the middle to have some storage and just working space. And that was also problematic for a number of reasons. And where I ended up is this V1 box, which is essentially an all-in-one. This has power, motor controllers, Padawan, amp, essentially everything you need. So I can just plug this in with XTC connectors and the audio jack, and then I'm ready to go. So this was also pretty cumbersome and big and kind of hard to get in and out. And so that led me to what I'm using today, my Control Box V2. And so if you've ever been to Galaxy's Edge, you might recognize this box from the Q lines. It's Canon now from Harbor Freight, glued down to all of their Q lines. So it's in universe. But essentially, I minimized and cleaned up cabling in here and moved it all into this. Went down to one battery, got the 12 amp hour, which I love. And yeah, I can do, just pull this down. A quick peek inside, also a mess. Here, I'll just unplug it. So I guess on the outside first, we've got, I turned it off. We've got power, which I probably need a beefier power switch, and motor controls, so I can cut those off just to, if I want to push it so I don't regen power in, or just for troubleshooting. And then I've got my battery monitor, and then I've got a temperature sensor. And so if it gets up another 2 degrees, the fan will kick on and try to keep everything cool in there, because I was worried about ventilation and heating being inside of an enclosure. And so this has gone pretty well for me for a few events. I had one where I was running the other one and I had a couple issues, and it took me 2 minutes to swap out the entire system and just keep going. So I basically had a backup of everything except for the motors. And so I was going to do a demo. No, that's fine. It's a blank slide. So I've got my scrap droid here, and then I do have a little wiring harness I made just to make it easier to bring things in and out. It's just XTC connectors. And then I've got my, okay, thanks. So I've got all my motor connectors here. And so I've got blue for dome. That goes in upside down so I don't mix it with the wheels and start spinning crazy. Left and right, I do port and starboard. That's the green and red, because I always get confused if that's R2's right or my right. And so now we're plugged in. And I lost audio because I don't have a long enough cord. But yeah, so, and then I could do the same thing. Swap it out with this box. And I'd be good to go. So that's where I got to today. And it's been fun and interesting. But what I wanted to talk about is breaking this down into more modular components. So this all-in-one has been really nice to just kind of move around, troubleshoot. Actually, one other thing that's really cool is Actually, if I unplug it, and if you can see the switches, I can actually test the motor controls without anything plugged in. The red always is kind of dim just because of the red resistance. But if I move the dome, you should see a blue light come on for the blue switch. And so that would be moving the dome. If I plug that in, then you can see that that will correspond with the dome movement. And so it's a great way I can pull it off, take it to my kitchen table, work on it without having to bring the whole droid in. Same thing then for the motors.
And sometimes these switches come out like as we were showing it. So they'll have a second box and if it's not working, shove it in there.
Yeah, she's the expert. She puts up with me all the time.
Bless
yeah.
you, my child. Bless you.
Yes. So yeah, so now you can see the leg motors are lighting up there. I don't have any visualizations on the audio yet, but it's been a huge help to just not be in the hot garage all night. And also at cons, I can just take the control box, leave the droid. If I need to make any tweaks, I do it in my room. I can test it, and then I just come back and plug it in. Cool. Any quick questions before we go on to the next section?
Are you going to be showing inside the box?
Oh yeah, I can. It's really messy.
See, there's the money shot.
So
We know how you guys are. It's okay.
So we got the Sabertooth here, big fan here, my biggest fan, and then
She's out there.
was the Siren. I got the amp tucked in there dangerously. Some fuses kind of spread throughout. I've got the Padawan system, so I've got my Mega. So I got this really tiny buck converter that I kind of love. It just kind of slips in there for the 5 volts. I'm using an Adafruit sound effects board because I couldn't get the Spark funds at the time. And then that's really about it, running through the switches. And
What's the remote?
the remote is, so I always, every time I do a build, I have a remote kill switch. So if something happens, I cut off at the power and, you know, I don't know, if there's a runway, if I set down the remote and the kid grabs it, I can just shut it off, make sure it doesn't, you know, do something more irresponsible. I don't build chopper. So, and so then I can also, you know, turn that on and off here if I don't have the remote on my person. And so, yeah, this also was problematic. It's a lot of stuff crammed in there. You start to close it, things can touch. I still get loose wires and all of that stuff. And so if I want to come in and so one of the big things I want to do next is move from the Bluetooth to the RC. And so that would mean, you know, redoing most of kind of this area and heavily integrated with the rest of the box. So that's where I got into the modular design. So I will pop this down for a minute.
Okay. You gonna put it in?
No.
Live demonstration of you shoving it in there?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So yeah, how easy it is to put in. Because this one's a bit smaller, so it's easier to put in. I've got the wiring harness.
You're good.
And the whole thing with the battery can just slide in. It's not seated in there, right? But we're off.
So how long did it take you to come up with this crazy idea of shoving everything of R2's brain into a box?
I don't know. It wasn't a single decision so much as solving a lot of problems that ultimately kind of led me here. And so I do have 99 problems if you want to switch back over to the slide.
I will go back to this.
So these are all the things I was thinking about building. Sorry. These are all the things I was thinking about building the boxes. And then as I got into kind of the modular thought, you don't have to read all this. I was just kind of, just to give you an idea of what's wrong in my brain. But yeah, like big thing for me was safety. I wanted, I didn't want chance of shorts. I wanted to be able to, have emergency stops, be able to hand it off, and troubleshooting, kind of, as I mentioned, it's easy to pull it out. I can quickly tell if something's happening in the body or if it's happening in the control unit. For the modular aspect, I started learning CAD, so I designed my own boxes, which I'll bring out here in a minute. So that's been a whole interesting journey that I started like 3 weeks ago. And yeah, my other goals were I wanted it to be cheap and easy to print, no hardware really, because I just wanted to be able to have something that I could prototype with quickly and iterate as I was starting to kind of put this together. Some other things in here that I kind of mentioned before was like the thermal and physical, just control, organization, easy connectivity. So the thought was too, if somebody else had a droid that went down, if they can get to motor connectors and an audio connector, then I can give them a box and they can get running. And then modular and upgrade paths. So with the modular approach, it's really meant to kind of separate, actually here's the modular concept. So I was doing essentially layers of separate functions. So power is its own unit, has its own inputs and outputs. Brain has its own inputs and outputs, it's its own unit. Motor control, same thing. And then again, I wanted to not, be dealing with, tiny screws if I'm on site and that kind of stuff. So I wanted it to really be able to kind of, be easy to field manage.
I just want to say something. I love that you're drawing like this because now I don't feel so stupid that I haven't learned CAD yet to make fancy drawings. And you just did this, which means any one of us could sit there and just doodle and try to get something working.
That's most of what it's mostly Scratch. So some key concepts. I'm a software engineer by trade. And so these were kind of things that I started bringing over from just stuff I had learned writing software. So single responsibility principle, basically each box has one job and one job only. And so as long as they're doing that job, like we're good. So we don't have to, like, let's say I want to upgrade the amp to be a bigger one. I can just take the amp box and upgrade that. And I'm not introducing any regression bugs into the rest of the system because I know I'm in a self-contained unit. Separations of concerns. So again, the boxes don't really interfere with each other. They're all kind of standalone. And then interfaces over internals. So really talking about how data and power goes in and out of the box, more so than, focusing on what's inside for this talk anyway. So really trying to make it so it's easy to swap, easy to upgrade, easy to try new things, and kind of future-proof it so that I can, the idea with the hexagon stack is that if I have another idea, I just add a layer on top, and R2's got enough vertical space, the entire thing will sit in there and can just kind of go up and down based on what I want to have in the droid at that time. And so I'll do the demo here, but before that, I wanted to just kind of show what it is that we're looking at. And so we've got 4 layers. Green on top here is the amp, the brain with the Arduino, and also the sound controller. So the Adafruit FX board is in there. Motor controls the sirens, or the siren and the motor, or the saber tooth. And then power is just power distribution. I moved from having the batteries embedded to just doing an 18-volt in so that I have a little more flexibility there, and then I can move the battery around in the body. I just like to keep it low, and so if I can, have a couple batteries in there, then I can just use one of the Ryobi connectors and connect it up. So let's take a look at it. Is Oscar? Cool. All right. And yeah, it's very early prototype, zip ties, and all that fun stuff. But
I'll get closer.
cool.
Go for it.
Cool. So just kind of taking these layer by layer. We've got our amp, got the brain, motor controllers with ventilation and fan, and then essentially power distribution. And so what's kind of cool about this design is I aligned all of the verticals. So as you stack these, you can start to notice all the switches line up in the same row. And so that gives you real easy access as you're pulling off the back of the Droid, do whatever you need to do. To the side, you get a little more information, battery meters, voltmeters, amps. I'm going to have some more outputs there in the future. And then on this side, you have all your internal connections. So module to module. So we've got data from the brain to the motor controller, and then we've got audio from the brain to the amp. And then on this side, this is all Droid out stuff. I lied. This is still internal. So this is power, power distribution to everywhere. The next one is all of the stuff to the Droid. So to the speakers, 18-volt in from the battery, and then motors out. And so then as I'm plugging stuff in, it's all right here. If I'm dealing with internal stuff, it's all right here. And this is just kind of a rudimentary design. These enclosures could be anything. They could be shaped to fit, into corners of your Droid. As long as they have the right inputs and outputs, it doesn't really matter. And so let's do a little demo here. So I'm going to start with the power layer. So I've got my XC60 connector here. Got a Ryobi 18-volt, which runs a little higher. So that's on. And now we've got power. But we don't have the kill switch turned on yet. Where'd I put it? No, it's a separate one.
Yes, sir. Color coding these.
I actually did. So there we go. So now we've got power. We've got a USB charger if you want, actually, this is kind of fun. Oh no, here it is. I was thinking about throwing this in like behind the data port or something. It's just one of these little sound visualizers that runs off 5 volts. So just kind of throw that there. Yeah, so now we've got power. We've got our battery meter. And so we're good to move on. So we can't really do anything with the others until we have the brain, which is purple. So we dropped this, and these all have, they broke off some of them in transit, but I got little pegs on the bottom that slot into the pegs on the tops of each of these. And so they just kind of stack in. And then it's nice and sturdy. So, brain, we need power. So, we'll grab a power cable from power and connect up to the brain. Now we've got power. We can turn that on. So now that's running. Let's see if it's actually connecting to my controller. Yep, so we can tell that it's running Padawan, or hold on. There, you can tell it's running Padawan because it's got that top one. I can click through and you can see the speed changes. That's about the only way you can tell right now. So let's go to the sound next. So we've got our amp player. Again, we need power from our power vertical. And now we've got amp power, but we still need signal. So we've got a jumper from the brain. That's not the right size. From the brain to the amp. And my output isn't working right now. I got polarity messed up or something, but I do have a tiny speaker in here. You might be able to hear just so that I can kind of tell that it's working. Can you?
Yeah.
Cool. And I can open this up in a minute and you can kind of see what's inside that. What are we doing on time? All right.
You're good. You're good.
Cool, cool. So next, the beefy motor controller. So we slot that in. What do you think the next step's going to be?
Power. Where's the sound effect? Sorry, I don't have that up to limit. Would you, you know, next year I'm gonna make a special little soundboard over here.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna let you guys actually jump in once in a while.
Crowdsourcing.
Yep, yep. So it costs you $59.59. Just.
So I got a problem here because the cable I brought is too short, but
It's modular.
it's modular, so you can rearrange it to whatever you need. So now it fits.
Almost like a clan, that.
So now,
Oh, you're like,
oh, that's fine. That's not really.
You just spilled your drink, dude. Now it is.
Cool, cool. So we've got power in there, but nothing's happening. There's no signal. So I decided to use the Ethernet jacks to handle all of my signal. And so I just have a couple of connectors in there that have screw terminals. And so I used just a couple surface mount for these. And so I've just got a standard Ethernet jack that plugs in. And now I've got signal to the control box. So you probably can't hear that super well, but now these are the motor switches. I can flip these on. You see the red kind of lights up, kind of like this one, because I don't have a resistor in there. But again, I can move the dome and hopefully the blue lights up. And then left and right, we should get our port and starboard colors. But I don't have Padawan moved over to the drives yet, so let me do that. And now they're showing. So now we should be getting power to all of those. So
The ultimate test.
yeah,
He's gonna shove it in.
just show these exterior. So here's our same motor connectors we were using the other boxes. Blue for the dome is up on top here, so I don't get it mixed up. And then left and right.
So later we're gonna get questions probably on the video. Could you just tell them what type of connectors those are?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are XT60. They're pretty standard. They're kind of a pain to solder, but they do have some that have like leads already attached. But yeah, I use these for all of the anywhere I want just the thicker gauge wires to connect. So I use it for the motors, but then for the other power for the smaller ones, I just use a barrel jack. All right, so we're in and we're moving. Like I said, I don't know. We'll try it. I don't know if the audio is actually going to come through with this, but
It will or won't.
yeah, it's still just hitting this. I got to rewire something there. But the idea being that this whole thing now, pull this off. Oh yeah, I don't have it
Magnets yet.
zip tied together. But the idea being that all of this can then just set inside the droid. I haven't done this yet, so this is a live test.
This is a live test, everybody. Here we go. We're doing this live.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it. That's the subject.
It's a mess, but it's in there. And
It worked. It's in there. And oh yeah!
so if it didn't work, I got two backup plans right here in separate boxes. But then let's say you're working on something and your amp blows. You can pull just this out and come work on it. And so if you want to pull a camera over here, I'll just pull this open. This box is a good example of like kind of a starting point if you're not really comfortable with electronics. Because there's not much to this one. It's really, I put a tiny speaker in here just so I could troubleshoot on the bench. But it's a power switch. I haven't hooked up the fuse yet. The voltmeter, and then we've got jacks for input and output. Amp has input and output and power, and that's all it is. And so you could switch out this amp to something heavier. You could add additional inputs. You could put a mixer in here. You could add huge speakers and have a speaker tower on it. So you could do all sorts of stuff. But this is kind of, the starting point for one of the simple boxes. And then all of these sides are just slotted in. So you can swap out any of those sides pretty easily. I had to hot glue them because of time. But that will be the idea once I get that cleaned up. And then, let's see, pull the rest back out. Cool. And so these, obviously don't have to be stacked. You could have them all plugged in here and kind of have everything open or just what you want open to work on. I figure I'll take a minute and just kind of pop these open and take a look. They're still messy on the inside. I'll get to it. But it's getting cleaner and more space and less risk of error or, shorts and that kind of stuff. So we saw the amp box. So close that off. And take a look at the power is probably the next simplest. And they don't have to be stacked in those verticals. Like if you had like a weird connector that you needed to get somewhere else in the Droid, you could just rotate it. And it doesn't really matter. So power box has my remote kill switch down there, like we saw in the others. And it's just really connecting up the jacks to the input and putting a meter on there. And so it looks messy. It looks more intimidating than it is. There's really not a whole lot going on in there. I still have to hook this one up. On my R2, I have a power that goes up through the slip ring to power the dome lights, but I didn't do that for this. And then the other thing I always kind of try to keep in mind is safety. And so something else I want to add onto here is another XT60 that I can have a plug that basically is just a short for it. And then that will be on the positive line. And you could put this in your Droid, pull out the plug, and then put in an emergency stop switch, and then put that anywhere you want on your Droid. So you could have essentially like, like that emergency stop on the back of the SK in the Star Cruiser had like a button there. So you could like plug that in and have it wired into your Droid, but then remove it as you want to take the stuff out. And so that's power. So each.
Yeah, he asked, how are you fusing that? Sorry, just for the people online.
So I'm doing fuses on each component. I didn't do fuses on this at this point. But so like the brain will have a fuse. And so each component then has the appropriate fuse for whatever's inside of there. And then I can come back and add, I do have a main fuse on the power that I have just as a safeguard. But then, yeah, these could come back and just add more of those. They're just these little surface mount ones. So I could check them from the exterior if I need to. And then they just pop out. They're really snug. Yeah. So let's open the brain. And so again, this one has power and data, and then power input. And so this is the Padawan system with the Mega, with my soundboard, ground loop, the receiver for the Xbox controller. And then here's the little terminal jack for the Ethernet, which is really handy to do all the signal wires. And that's it. That's all that's in this one then. And then we'll jump to the motor controller, which I'm still kind of working on. I didn't quite get where I wanted it to be, but we can still look at it. So again, I had this vented on the top. I haven't hooked up the fan yet like I've got in my other boxes. It's a little, I think I need to adjust some spacing. But yeah, the idea being that it reaches a certain temp and we start some airflow. And then inside of here, once I get that tidied up, it'll be a lot cleaner to see, but you've just got your connectors going to your switches, go into your motor controllers, and you're getting power in. And then your signal comes from the Ethernet jack and goes to your siren and your saber tooth. And so the idea too being like, say like I could make an amp, I could make a power thing, but I don't even know what I'm doing with the motor controllers. Somebody else could build just this module as long as it has the right input and output and send it to you. And you know, you can kind of collaborate that way on specific components without having to have like the entire board shipped around or that kind of thing. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now on the prototype. Kind of where this can go next is, I'm not sure. You know, there's all sorts of different ideas I've been playing with. Like, I had an extra box I made, so I just popped that on for storage and put everything I needed in there. But yeah, like we could do other like fun visual stuff. I was thinking about doing one with like one of those fan holograms in there and have it like, you know, swarzy. You could add I could add another layer for if I get into more animations with panels and that kind of stuff. And then when I get to, I think there's going to be a presentation on Kyber I need to see. But when I get to updating,
Funny enough, that's up next.
yeah, excellent. So when I get to upgrading from the Bluetooth, all I have to worry about then is this brain layer. I don't have to worry about the rest of this. As long as I'm sending the right signals out, I can isolate it. And that's also really nice for like, you know, because with the control box, I have to have the entire system to swap in and out, which can get expensive if you're duplicating all of your parts. Whereas like, let's say I've got a expensive brain, I could have all of the other parts that are cheaper in the droids and then just move the brain around. So really kind of flexible and however you want to use it. And then, yeah, if you want to go back to the slide. So kind of next steps, I don't have the designs ready to share yet. There's not much to them, but like I mentioned, they kind of all just slot together and you can just rearrange them however you want. But yeah, I'd be curious, you know, what you all would like to see, like what kinds of modules would be helpful. What changes to this would be, you know, helpfully consistent across droids. And then, yeah, kind of like takeaways from this. I'm thinking, you know, if you're just getting into electronics, you can really start simple, start with a small box. The amp, for example, you don't have to have anything droid related. All you need is an input signal from your phone. So you could do that on your own, get comfortable with it, and then decide how you want to move on from there. For more seasoned builders, you know, we could start building our own enclosures. We could share mounting files. We could make enclosures that fit, you know, the nooks and crannies of R2 or Chopper or whatever. And as long as we're keeping things consistent and what to expect in and out, that can make it, you know, just more reliable and also like more weather resistant and just more durable, you know, within your droids. So yeah, so that's what I've got now. We've got a few minutes. If anybody has questions or if you want to dive deeper into anything.
Anybody got any questions?
Have you thought of just putting like a power rail on two of those connectors and just making it modular that way so you don't have to plug in and out?
Yeah. So yeah, I thought about just doing either a base that kind of goes up the back and they all slot in like a server, or having like the connectors on the bottom and top so you just plop them down. But I wanted to make it, because my goal wasn't to make a tower that everybody can use. It's really to demonstrate the modularity of it. And I felt like that was too restrictive for what I was wanting to show. But I think that's absolutely like a good idea for like a permanent solution. The other thing, because I didn't always have the hexagon. For a while I had all of the switches, all of the things up front, and had kind of like a Klea dashboard where I was like, it's fun to click in all the stuff, and I was kind of enjoying that. But yeah, there's definitely things that you could do. You could even have like a single, plug all of the data into one rail too, and share that. But yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
Any other questions or comments that you wish to deliver to them?
Or jokes about my name. I think I've heard them all, but go for it.
All right, if there's no more questions, let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Philip. And next upcoming is the Kyber. Heart of Kyber.
I'll just leave the brain here, and they can just update it while I'm.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
I was looking at it, and my thoughts was, I don't know if you could, like, in the corners, have, like, a printed column.
I did do that.
And then have, like, where these can, like,
Coming from the front.
or even the sides are not flat, but, like, cut to the angle it's supposed to be, and there's a magnet on. Or
Yeah,
magnet
I love
on.
that. Yeah, because then you can just pop it off from the side.